So I've just texted Carney in case she's going to join us. But why don't we go ahead and get started? And I know we're competing with the January 6th hearings, so we'll try to be as riveting as possible. So Ralph and Suzanne Wood are relatively new to life here at St. John's Cathedral. Their daughter Harriet and grandchildren sing in the choir, and son-in-law Glenn, he's a cheerleader for the choir, and they're currently at Ely Cathedral. I've known of Ralph for many, many years. Ralph for many, many years taught at Wake Forest and then taught at Baylor under the auspices of sort of theology and literature. So how many times would you say you've taught Walker Percy?
Oh my. I taught him every year for a long time. But I taught all of his novels, not simply this one.
Sure. And then Nancy, when you were teaching at UT, is this a novel you would have worked with?
No, I never taught them. I never even read the novel until now.
Okay, okay.
It's too modern for me.
Too modern for you.
I mean, that's not a judgment of the novel.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's not my field.
In your field,
So.
okay. Other folks, was this the first, had other folks already read the novel before? Or was this
This was my
you'd read
first
it?
reading.
First reading, you'd read it before?
Yeah,
Towns?
and I haven't reread it, so I don't know what I'm
Okay.
gonna remember.
And Suzanne, I'm assuming you,
I just read it recently, as I was telling your wife, I had to avoid reading his marginalia because I never would have gotten through it. Rice and rice and rice.
any other? who read it?
First time.
First time, and Mary first time? So what I'm anticipating tonight is I want to kind of draw Ralph out as much as you're willing to be drawn out, but also that doesn't mean we don't all just chime in. For me, this is a novel that hooked me, again, as a Baptist seminarian. As I said to Ralph a few weeks ago, there was a type of Baptist seminarian when I was at Southern Baptist in Louisville that read Wendell Berry, Flannery O'Connor, Walker Percy, Dorothy Day. It was sort of a type. I think it was a type that meant you weren't going to be a Southern Baptist for much longer.
Thomas Merton was that group.
Thomas Merton, very much in that group. And so I read this novel, and I at the time I had never been to New Orleans. And I was a parish priest at All Souls in Asheville when Hurricane Katrina hit. And Asheville and New Orleans have a strong connection. And so the Sunday after Katrina, I was preaching. And in thinking about the gospel lesson that day and the tragedy of Katrina, and we were already receiving refugees from New Orleans to All Souls that Sunday, I actually used the closing scene of this novel in that sermon as a way to try to connect the trauma of Katrina and what was going on. I don't think it was all that effective, but I was quite taken with what I was trying to do. So I thought highly of the sermon, but no one else did, I don't think. And but I've always been captivated by this novel, and so again, the fact that you're here tonight is a great joy. So I'm curious for you, when was the first time you came across this?
Well, I had begun to hear Walker Percy when I began to teach at Wake Forest in 1971, an antediluvian year. And Flannery O'Connor was, of course, his contemporary, and she had great admiration for him and he of her. And so I knew I'd been reading her forever. Come in, right here. I knew that if she had a high estimate of him, I better have one. So I began reading him when I was at the beginning of my career, 1971.
Okay. So for many people, obviously, Percy serves as sort of a Catholic writer, and for some folks. And for you, to what degree would you think of this as a Catholic novel? How does it fit that category or not?
Sure, if you do that with great care. Percy did not want to be called a Catholic novelist. He thought that term would be reductive. Oh, just another Catholic novelist. We don't have to take him seriously. Because for him, the whole question is, can one believe in God at all? Much less can one be a Roman Catholic. So he's dealing with a subtler kind of work, of point of view. Because we're going to read where Binks Bolling says, whenever the word God is uttered, a curtain roars in my head.
Yeah.
I don't know what in the hell they're talking about. But by the end, he does know what they're talking about. We're going to see he undergoes a very great turnabout.
Sure, sure. So, also I'm aware that Percy initially really wanted to write philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
and so in some ways is this novel a way that he sort of expresses a philosophical view of the world, would you say?
Yeah, we will look at a couple of passages where he is. He came down with tuberculosis, Percy, a little biographical. And I brought a little biographical sketch that the bishop will have copies made, and if you would like to have it
We'll get it
later.
to everybody.
But he worked without masks, if you believe this, on tuberculosis victims at Physicians and Surgeons Hospital in New York City. And half the team came down with tuberculosis, if you believe that. And they had to, of course, the only cure for it was they thought was to stay in a sanatorium. So he went to upstate New York and stayed in a sanatorium for over a year just trying to recover his health. And he began to read Albert Camus, for example, if you know Camus' novel, The Stranger, it undergirds everything in this book. He began to read Dostoevsky. He began to read the really brain cracker, Martin Heidegger. He began to read Søren Kierkegaard, from whom we get the head note. So he read himself, as it were, into a kind of Christianity that he thought he had left behind once and for all. Now, he did have a very good Catholic friend there who kept saying, you're reading all these Catholic writers, you better consider becoming one. And of course, he wound up becoming a Catholic. And so it's a Catholic novel insofar as it's written out of what I would call a Catholic vision. And that doesn't mean there's a crucifix in every room. That doesn't mean we're going to see people doing this all the time. It means something quite different, that for him, the Christian faith is profoundly incarnational. And what that means is that for him, everything has the potential of becoming a holy thing, if we have the lenses through which we can see it. And so in this novel, we'll look at some particular things that Percy is wanting us to look at afresh, and to ask, why does he see those things there? And they're always named. I was noticing today, he doesn't say just so-and-so high school. He names the high school. And you can go to New Orleans and follow every path that Binks Bowling takes in this novel. That's how true it is to the geography of the place. So it is Catholic in an implicit way.
Is there a street in a suburb outside of New Orleans named Elysian Fields?
Mm-hmm.
That's not great.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
That was the best, I missed that the first time I read it
yeah.
somehow, and picked it up this time, and I thought, that's the best hidden meaning street name since UT dropped its plan for Valhalla as a retirement home for professors.
Well, recently when we were in New Orleans last December, I found the aunt's house
Oh, my.
and walked around it and was stalking for a while and thought better of that. But I found what I think is the address and that house. And later I saw a tour group and someone who I think was saying, well, this is the house that is featured in the Moviegoer. So if you don't know, Percy was born in 1916 in Birmingham, Alabama. Really prominent Southern family, but also, like so many Southern families, haunted with mental illness, haunted with suicide. His father committed suicide. His grandfather committed suicide.
With the same gun.
And his mother died in a car accident that seemed potentially also suicidal, with the youngest son in the back who survived.
She didn't try to help him out?
So the three boys go to Greenville, Mississippi to live with William Percy, who wrote a memoir called Lanterns on the Levee. And in many ways, the aunt and William Percy are similar characters, kind of the end of an era of how to be Southern in a certain kind of slightly progressive, but very much sort of a ruling class sort of perspective. And I think her speech at the end, when she's given him what for, is probably something that William Percy could have recited just as much.
See, what Percy does is a flip. he was reared by his father's first cousin,
Who
a
was
bachelor.
Roman Catholic?
No, that's the whole point. His father's first cousin was a Stoic humanist who had given up his faith at Sawadee.
It happens, it does happen, yeah.
And so Percy didn't have any kind of Catholic upbringing. He had an anti-Catholic upbringing, but he honored this man so greatly for having taken on 3 teenage boys to rear them, a bachelor living in Greenville, Mississippi. And so he honors Uncle Will, as he was called, in a backward way by turning Aunt Emily into Uncle Will. So when you think of Aunt Emily here, think of William Alexander Percy. And if you want one book that will take you back into the world of the South as it was, read Lanterns on the Levee. Yes, ma'am.
So when we talk about Aunt Emily and Will Percy, he, you know, like, he was criticized because he went out and helped his, what was I reading? His farm people needed help, and he went out and helped them, and he didn't act like he was better than them.
That's right.
So, but Aunt Emily, she kind of alludes to being, she says, we are better.
Yeah.
And so when they said when, I don't remember what I was watching, but they said Aunt Emily was Uncle Will, I went, but he got his hands dirty with his
Yeah.
people, and I don't ever think of Aunt Emily getting her hands dirty for anybody.
Yeah.
But, so I did draw, I could
Yeah, I
see that,
did
yes,
draw,
they're very
yeah.
similar, but I went, okay, I would not, I see that I was raised in Mississippi, and we're gonna take care of people, but some of that, we're gonna take care of people, also make sure that those people stay where they are.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And I know that life all too well.
Yeah.
You're right onto it. Percy's introduction to Lanterns on the Levee says, I owe a greater debt to this man, William Alexander Percy, than anyone else. A debt that is beyond all pain, by which he means exactly what you do, a high, noble, stoic humanism that Percy would eventually have to reject
Yeah.
and overthrow.
I've read somewhere where, in some ways for Percy, once he realized this family history of suicide, while in some ways maybe he was haunted by that, it also allowed him to realize his choice, his ability to keep living was a kind of choice against suicide.
Yeah.
So in some ways, is there...
That's what Kate says.
Yes.
What Kate says.
Yeah, yeah. So in some ways, Binks Bowling, in his search,
Yeah. Oh,
is
yeah.
kind of, there's a Walker Percy and Binks, you would...
Good. Percy called himself an ex-suicide.
Ex-suicide, wow.
But there's a passage, if we could turn to it,
Yes, sir.
where Kate Coutray says the only thing that keeps me alive is the possibility of killing myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyone remember who that is offhand?
Yeah.
It's
I
near the
marked
end,
it,
they're on the
but-
train.
I was reading it.
On the train?
No,
Yeah,
it's
they're on the
not.
train.
Find what page it is.
It's when they're getting ready to get on the train.
Okay.
On the train to Chicago?
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Well, his point is that the person who is contemplating suicide knows there's something profoundly wrong and is admitting the profound wrongness, not only of that person's life, but the world in general, and therefore has been more honest about things than the person who
194.
glides through life and everything. What page?
194.
194. Excellent. Would you read that, sir, that passage? It's 3 to 4 lines from the bottom
Yeah.
on 194. Would you read that?
The truth, of course, is the exact opposite. Suicide is the only thing that keeps me alive. When everything else fails, all I have to do is consider suicide, and in 2 seconds, I'm as cheerful as a nitwit.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
But if I could not kill myself, then I would. I can do without Nebutal or murder mysteries, but not without suicide.
Yeah, Emetol, of course, is, I guess, a antipsychotic medicine. Again, Percy wants to get clear that the act, which of course the church put its face against from the start, you don't take your own life, that's what the Stoics did, could be regarded in a kind of backward way as a sign of human freedom. That rather than, as I say, coasting through life, never asking a question, but rather, remember this woman keeps her thumb completely shredded. Remember that? She is so devoured by anxiety. She just simply shreds her thumb. And therefore, for her to say what you just read was a very courageous thing.
Well, and you have, obviously, when he's in the Korean War, that experience of being wounded is a kind of call to life or call to search. When Kate and her fiance, when he's killed in the car accident, she said, you know, I'm on the bus coming home, it's one of the happiest days of my life. Not so much that her fiance is dead, but just maybe that encounter with something final.
It is that. It's also something else more subtle. She didn't want in that marriage to begin with.
Yeah, I know exactly where that's going. She didn't want to marry the man. Any more than she wanted to marry the other one.
Walter, he didn't want to marry Walter either. Yeah.
And in a perverse way, she's glad she didn't get trapped in that marriage.
Thank the Lord, Emily wanted to be.
Yeah.
I have a question about soldiering.
Okay.
Because it seems to be so important in a kind of, when his aunt says, after his brother has died,
Oh,
you have to
be a
keep
good soldier.
soldiering on.
Yeah.
And then there's all this military experience of his father and his uncles, some of them, and yet it's sort of, I guess it's that stoic kind of, stand up and do what you have to do. But it's also, I guess, military glory or something. I'm not sure what.
Could you repeat that one?
So she's mentioning how much
Sorry,
the
but-
idea of the idea of being a soldier and soldiering on show up in the novel. You know, like when his brother dies and his aunt says you need to be a good soldier, and all the soldiering images and actual military, and didn't know to what degree maybe it was around military glory, would you say, or honor?
Well, that seems to be in it too, in some ways. But then he's wounded at some crucial point and doesn't know exactly what's happened, so he doesn't know whether he's being heroic or not.
That's right.
Or whether he missed his opportunity.
Yeah, well, remember when his brother dies and Aunt Emily takes him out for a walk?
Right, exactly. That's where it starts.
That's
yeah.
the scene you're referring to, and it's a scene that would be worth our looking at.
Okay.
It's right almost at the beginning.
It's very
at the
early.
beginning,
It is the very beginning.
when young Bowling says, "Is that all I have to do?"
Yeah.
Now, where is that?
Is that all I have to do? Yeah, it's right at the very beginning, yeah.
I don't see it, but the point is that for the young Binks Bowling, of course, I could buck up. I could have a stiff upper lip
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
British do.
Mhm.
No whimpering,
Mhm.
no whining. Be a soldier, be a tough little
Yeah,
boy.
yeah.
But already as a little boy, he's asking, is that all?
Mhm.
Which I
Has my brother just been flushed down the sinkhole of history like a goldfish on a commode? He's just finished?
Yeah, right.
And we soldier on? No. Where is my dead brother?
Mhm.
That's the question he wants to ask.
Mhm.
So you've nailed it.
Do you think that sets up the whole tension between duty and Bix?
Between who and Biggs?
A duty
Duty.
and
Yeah.
Bix, because, Aunt Em is always going back to duty and what you should
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
And Bix is always going back to, maybe I don't have to do that.
That's the right word. It's not used that often, but for Percy, old-fashioned Southern culture that was in a kind of cosmetic way Christian had as its favorite word duty, duty, duty. The tradition of noblesse oblige, to whom much is given, much is also required. The obligation of nobility to look after those who are lesser than we are. And he came to see That's not enough. So what's the alternative? That's the question Percy's raising.
I haven't thought about the alternative part. I mean, he senses it, you're certainly right, sorry.
You're fine, we can hear you. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, but I again, I grew up in the South. You know, the thought that, just go ahead, pick up the rug and sweep that stuff underneath it. Don't talk about it.
Yep.
Don't talk about it. Don't talk about, oh, did it hurt your feelings?
Yep.
No, we're not gonna talk about it. We're just not gonna talk about it. We're just gonna go on. Let's go on now. And it was just a tad bit unhealthy. And I still believe in to those that are given much is asked for.
About what?
To those that have been given much is expected. I absolutely believe I have a duty. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not gonna take time to investigate the inner workings of my neighbor every once in a while and make sure that I'm grounded.
Right.
It's a balance.
Again, you're on target. For Percy, the question comes, why do you have that sense of duty? Where does it come from? What is its origin? What's its basis? What is its source? When will it run out? After we've done it, we've done it, and we're left over. One of Percy's favorite words. So he wants, as we see, he goes back to medical school, the ultimate duty.
Yeah.
Which he's been saying, no, I don't want nothing.
Well, and to me, what was also interesting about Percy's biography, in studying medicine, he studied pathology. So he studied disease, not so much the cure, right? He was looking at like, what's the ailment?
Yeah. He had a great dilemma as a doctoral student at Columbia between pathology and psychiatry. He was tempted deeply to enter psychiatry because he had been under psychiatric care the whole of his 4 years at Columbia, because he was so messed up when he got there. He didn't know who he was. He wasn't even certain about his own sexuality, and on and on and on. But he found a wonderful talk Freudian therapist who believed in the old idea of transference, where the person who's seeking analysis transfers trust over to the person who is the analyst. And it happened to be a woman. And she became his surrogate mother.
Oh, wow.
And she could give him advice he would take. She would say, go, Walker, and do this. And he would do it.
Wow.
So he recovered largely through that woman psychiatrist in Columbia. Yeah.
Is that reflected in Kate saying to Bix,
Yes.
I can do all this, but you tell me what to do. You tell me what to do, and
Yes.
I'll do it.
Yes. We're going to come to that scene a little bit later, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
because that's one of the most controversial scenes in the book. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ladies. And I read that scene in a class about this size, and several women stood up and screamed. We don't have to be told what to do. But it's subtler than that, as we shall see. Yeah,
But she
needs-
also, when he was lost in Chicago, Kate, like, this is what we're doing. We're going here. She helped him find his way.
Well, yes, because he's looking for somebody whom he can't go on being ironic about. See, the whole point of Binks's narration of this book is he's holding himself at a distance from life. He's mocking everything that's stupid and empty and dead in our culture. He believes, as Alexander Solzhenitsyn would say, we have forgotten God. Of course, he didn't use that language. So what have we put in its place? All of these empty substitutes. But what he does is simply mock them, laugh at them, rail at them. But at one point, Kate will say to him, Binks, You are as cold as the unmoved mover. That's Aristotle's famous definition of God, the unmoved mover. In other words, Binks, you're a cold fish. You can laugh at everybody and everything. How about yourself? No equals that. The only two people, if you will note well, to whom Binks can lower his antic stance are, of course, Kate herself, but what other?
Oh, Lonnie?
Why? You hear his answer? Lonnie, his half-brother. Why does he not mock? And Lonnie says, I'm going to go on a fast during Lent, even though I'm dying. And of course, the Binks says, why? He said, I have an habitual disposition to envy. He uses straight catechism language.
Well, I guess, is Lonnie for him, Lonnie confronts him as kind of a genuine person of faith, right?
He had a solid faith, yeah.
Yeah. He is a person who has been made totally real, genuine. There's not a false corpuscle in dying Lonnie. And Lonnie says, I envy my brother Duval, even though he's been dead 10 years. He caught the kickoff in the end zone against a game against Alabama and ran it back for a touchdown, and I still envy him for that. And that's a sin.
Well, and I think that's what's remarkable about the book is, for all of its heavy topics, so much of it is like, you just start laughing. If you read it, especially read it aloud.
This book is meant to be, and I have to say, my students less and less can identify with this book. But it's meant to be, as Brian says, really funny. And I hope you were able to laugh. I'm gathering most of you were. So it's not a book that we're going to be frowning about and super serious, but laughing about.
What? I'm
But
sorry.
it wasn't easy. It was not easy. I had to reread things
Yeah.
and, multiple times. And I went, okay. It is, it's like a Russian novel.
Well, I think that's why it's helpful, because first, I think, to me, unlike other novels, it doesn't give itself up easily. And I think if you think about some of his initial writing was philosophical essays, then I think in some ways it can be dense. It's almost like he's doing philosophy and trying to inhabit it with people.
In a comic book.
In a comic book, in a comic satire, yeah.
I must read a passage that I would be surprised if you don't laugh at.
Oh.
And that's when Binks tells us how he conforms to every social habit that society requires of him. He gets his driver's license renewed
Oh,
on
yeah.
the first
Oh,
day.
yeah.
yeah.
My armpits
Find
never
that
stink.
passage. I thought I
Armpits
had it
never
marked.
stink,
Yeah.
I read the Consumer Report.
He says, I own a first-class air conditioner, and I use the very best deodorants. My armpits
It's
never
never
stink.
stink. I'm looking at
Now that is funny.
it. Yeah.
I can't find it, but anyway.
Well, I think-
No, it's here. It's on page 7. My armpits
what?
never stink.
Oh, is it
7.
that early, yeah.
It's early. Well, he repeats.
Would you
himself.
please read beginning the top line, page 7? It is a pleasure.
It is a pleasure to carry out the duties of a citizen and to receive in return a receipt or a neat styrene card with one's name on it, certifying, so to speak, one's right to exist. What satisfaction I take in appearing the first day to get my auto tag and brake sticker. I subscribe to Consumer Reports, and as a consequence, I own a first-class television set, an all but silent air conditioner, and a very long-lasting deodorant. My armpits never stink. And I stopped at, yeah.
Well, I
So,
think-
confession time. Can you match me?
I don't know.
Consumer Reports.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That satisfies my existence.
I got a few too.
I'm real. I've got plastic that proves
It's,
in a neat styrene card
Yep.
that I'm not a fraud. I'm real.
I was
Right.
trying to I was not being recognized at work on something. They went, he was like, I work part-time. He goes, we just can't find you. We just can't find you. And I go, well, I get a paycheck. I think I'm real, but I guess I'm not. And of course, I'm thinking about this, but I didn't say
That's
go
good.
read the movie.
Well, I think it's
Good.
also interesting for those of us who are also maybe in this sort of golden age of television again, to read this novel. So this novel is published in '61. It's probably set in like 1959. And if you think about the recent story arc of Mad Men, you ever saw Mad Men, you know, Don Draper he's not a real person. But he's an advertiser guy who's created this image of himself. And so in reading this novel, I think I can see a lot of that era of sort of, again, the Consumer Reports. If you use this deodorant, you'll matter, you'll be real, and the way in which he's kind of years ahead of himself in writing this, because Binks is very much like a non-hero in the way that Don Draper and all these
Deliberately non-hero.
yeah, all these other non-heroes that we now kind of hold up in stories, but in the past would have you know, you would not have wanted to hear from the non-hero.
And what Brian is saying is contained in the epigraph. Did you all catch the epigraph from, and it's hard to pronounce, Søren Kierkegaard, who's a great 19th century Danish writer, whom Percy read from cover to cover when he was in the sanatorium in upstate New York. The specific character of despair is precisely this. It is unaware of being despair. What does he mean by that?
If you are floating along life and you're not looking deeply into the lenses, and life is too easy, and that would be despairing. That I would tell my kids, when they were all upset, you have a bad day. You don't have a bad day, you don't have a good day. You just don't know. You have to have those bad days. You have to feel that. And then you know.
Kierkegaard is trying to do the same thing Percy is. He's trying to give fresh, new language to traditional Christian convictions by not using Christian language. Percy says Christian language is like a coin that has been worn without a face. It no longer is negotiable. And so he's trying to use a substitute language. So he uses the word despair rather than the classic Christian deadly sin of which seven? Can you name which one he's getting at? Can you name the deadly sins?
Lust,
Greed.
Pride is the most obvious.
pride,
Name me another one.
sloth,
Gluttony, lust.
Sloth,
Gluttony.
The
Gluttony?
selfishness one? No, selfishness.
Greed.
lust, avarice. What have we left out?
I don't know, I'm about to Google it.
we're fighting
Well, he talks
Alzheimer's here.
also about being 30 at the end of the book. So he's looking back, and it sounds like Dante. I mean,
Gluttony. Gluttony's one, of course.
Yeah, Dante very much figures in this
Yeah.
novel.
Yeah.
Sloth is the sin of despair.
Sloth?
Now, sloth doesn't mean sleeping in when you should get up and teach yoga.
So just not
It
caring.
means an indifference toward the good,
Yeah.
not giving it in. And Percy thinks that's our besetting sin. And we are slothful in that deep sense, but he'd rather use the word despair as one that will connect with us rather than trotting out the word sloth.
Yeah.
Why do you think that your students are connecting less or have connected less with this over time?
Have you what?
Oh, so as you were teaching this, why was there less and less connection with this novel?
Yeah, students who are 19, 20, 21 years old can't identify with a person who's already, 40?
29. Binks is 29.
Binks is 29.
Yeah.
And hasn't found himself. They're wanting to wrestle with the question of Well, I teach Love in the Ruins, by the way, the funniest novel ever written. And my dear wife will not let me read it past 10 because I wake her up cackling. And so if you want, this is the novel the students know how to read.
Yeah.
Love, because he's crazy.
Yeah.
The narrator's a nutcase. But a nutcase in a very, very wonderful sense. Let me just give you the subtitle, and you can see why students take to this, of this book. It says, Walker Percy's Love in the Ruins, The Adventures of a Bad Catholic at a Time Near the End of the World.
Oh my gosh.
And it's really about the fear there's going to be a huge blow-up that will set off a nuclear war.
So when we say Catholic, we really are talking about the denomination Catholic, not the one holy Catholic church, right?
Not the one that what?
Not the one holy Catholic church like Catholic.
Well, let's be careful there. Careful there. Percy came to believe that there's no such thing as generic Christianity. There's no such thing as what C.S. Lewis, our good friend, called mere Christianity. Bedrock, essential, non-negotiable Christianity. There are only Christianities that have a particular, unique identity. And they are, of course, Roman Catholicism. They are the varieties of Protestantism. And they, of course, are the Eastern Orthodox Church. So yes, when Percy uses the word Catholic, he doesn't
He's
mean
talking about Roman
He
Catholic.
doesn't mean Rome.
Okay.
So you asked a question about
Good.
Kate.
Mhm.
I want to make sure we get to that scene about Kate. Which was it near the end? That,
I was seeing if there was
about
an
being-
equation between Kate and his psychiatrist.
Oh, being told what to do.
Since Kate was told or asked Vic to tell him or to tell her, tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Mhm.
And the picture you painted of his psychiatrist giving him motherly advice and telling him, go out and do this,
Mhm.
sounded very much in parallel.
It is in some ways. It is. So Percy is playing with a deeper conception from Kierkegaard that probably would be beyond my ability to explain quickly, which offensively Percy calls feminine despair. By that he means the despair of overdependence. I'm going to make all the women mad. Get ready. I'm
You're
an
doing
equal
it.
opportunity offender. And it was the belief of Kierkegaard that women have a tendency to need direction, to need to be told things to do.
I'm gonna move my chair from you, but go ahead. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure I would voice those words.
So that's the
Good,
connection
yeah,
about
yeah.
it seems to me.
Well, I'm curious. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, I was thinking about the moment when he's busy trying to seduce his secretary, and he decides to go to the old fish camp, thinking it'll be empty, and his mother is there with all these children, and we haven't met her at all before.
Yeah.
And so those conversations seem, I guess you would say an act of grace if you're talking in religious terms, but that her Catholicism is quite different from, I suppose,
Uncle Jules.
I mean, it brings him back to confront that Catholicism, and with all of her Catholic children, who are very dedicated, so.
Can we read the passage you're talking about?
Um,
The very end, page 240.
no, it's not that far along, it's.
Well, it relates to what you're
It's before they
saying.
go to Chicago, I think.
Okay, how about you read yours and then?
Yeah, what page are you on?
Oh, I don't know, let's see if I can find it here. Somewhere in the third section.
Are you talking about
Okay.
Sharon? Or are you talking about,
It's somewhere after 117 and before 157. I was sort of reviewing this and I didn't write all the, where he runs into, they have the car accident, and he's taken his secretary and is busy trying to seduce her, but he takes her, I think, to what he thinks is going to be the empty fishing camp.
and they're out there fishing. They're on the dock fishing when they arrive, right?
Yeah.
Well, yes, and eating crab, well, they're eating crab.
Yeah,
so
oh,
that's
crab,
right,
yeah,
right.
crabbing.
What
But
page
so-
is that?
So his mother is there, with her children, and his stepbrother comes and goes. And they have this long conversation about what his father was like too, which is interesting, because we don't know that part. We haven't known.
On
So-
138, he says, I want you to meet Sharon Kincaid, and his mother
What
says,
page,
well,
sir?
now, 138,
That sounds about right, yeah.
and, I don't know, there's a, and I had to look up the kind of fish they were talking about.
Me too.
It was basically
Yeah,
a crappie.
Crappie. I did too.
Right.
I went, what is this? Crappie.
And of course, crappie is a good eating fish, so I could get the, I could get the enjoyment of that.
So which scene were you wanting to find? Was it when he's talking to his mom?
Mhm.
So 141, when he corners his mother in the kitchen?
Ah, yeah.
I corner my mother in the kitchen?
Mhm.
Yeah. What's the matter with Lonnie? Why, nothing. He looks terrible. That child won't drink his milk, sings out my mother. He's had pneumonia again. He had the 5-day virus. It was bad, 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 bad. Did you ever hear of anyone with virus receiving extreme unction? Why didn't you call me? He wasn't in danger of death. The extreme unction was his idea, notice. He said it would strengthen him physically as well as spiritually. Have you ever heard of that? Yes. But notice, but is he all right? So she's oblivious to the depth of what this kid's calling.
But she is a sort of conveyor of the children, and particularly of Lonnie's
Right. That's good.
spirituality. And she's dodging from it,
Yeah.
sort of the way he's dodging a lot of
Yeah.
things. But,
So that, I hadn't got that. That anticipates the ending. That passage you're talking about.
yes, when he's actually died,
Right.
yeah, and he takes Kate to see,
Could
when
we,
he's dying, he takes Kate to see him,
Yeah.
to see Lonnie when he's dying.
I want to read, because it's so important that we not neglect it. Aunt Emily's reaming out.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh,
Of
she did a
Binks.
good job, didn't she?
And it's a passage that got Walker Percy tons of fan mail. Help me find it. I thought I had these all neatly marked. Oh yeah, it's on page 222 and 223. If you don't mind, let me read this. And remember, this is Uncle Will turned into Aunt Emily. And he probably is playing Percy knew William Faulkner. Faulkner's story called A Rose for Miss Emily. So 5 lines from the bottom, 222. At the great moments of life, success, failure, marriage, death, our kind of folks have always possessed a native instinct for behavior, a natural piety of grace, I don't mind calling it. Whatever else we did or failed to do, we always had that. I'll make you a little confession. I'm not ashamed to use the word class. I will also plead guilty to another charge. The charge is that people belonging to my class think they're better than other people. You're damn right we're better. We're better because we do not shirk our obligations, our duties. We're to ourselves or to others. We do not whine. We did not organize a minority group and blackmail the government. These are black radicals. We did not prize mediocrity for mediocrity's sake. Oh, I'm aware we hear many flattering things nowadays about your great common man. This is a very southern saying. You folks all know what the word common means. It does not mean the median point between top and bottom. It means utterly undistinguished and ordinary. I say common, I mean common as hell. Our civilization has achieved a distinction of sorts. Be remembered not for its technology nor even its wars, but for its novel ethos, which means way of life. Ours is the only civilization in history which has enshrined mediocrity as its national ideal. Can you hear the relevance of this book? Others have been corrupt, but leave it to us to invent the most undistinguished of corruptions. No orgies, no blood running in the street, no babies thrown off cliffs. No, we're a sentimental people and we horrify easily. True, our moral fiber is rotten, our national character stinks to high heaven, but we are kinder than ever. No prostitute ever responded with a quicker spasm of sentiment than when our hearts are touched. Nor is there anything new about thievery, lewdness, lying, adultery. What is new is that in our time, liars and thieves and whores and adulterers wish also to be congratulated and are congratulated by the great public if their confession is sufficiently psychological or strikes a sufficiently heartfelt and authentic note of sincerity. I do not deny it. I don't know anybody nowadays who is not sincere. You cross the next page. We are the most sincere Laodiceans. Do all of you Episcopalians catch the biblical reference?
Probably not, but
Who are the
from the
Laodiceans?
from the book of Revelation,
Laodiceans.
one of the churches that 7 letters were written to.
What?
I'm gonna help these people.
Please
Thank
do.
you. Thank you.
It's the church that was neither hot nor cold, but they were lukewarm.
Lukewarm
Yeah.
church.
And as the Greek says, and God will vomit it out of his mouth.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We're the most sincere Laodiceans who ever got flushed down the sinkhole of history. Then she concludes down about midway. All I can say is that I am content to be fading out of the picture. Perhaps we are a biological sport. I'm not sure, but one thing I am sure of, we live by our lights. We die by our lights. And whoever the high gods may be will look them in the face without apology.
I read this book way too early, probably 1979 or 1980. And Aunt Emily and that piece were the only characters, the only piece I could relate to, because I was wondering, how does he know my grandmother? Who was from Memphis.
Uh-huh.
I'm telling you, I have, this, I just sit there and go, ugh.
Now, can you explain why Walker Percy was flooded with fan mails saying, Walker, thank you for telling the truth?
Because they probably didn't get what he was really trying to do,
My grandmother would
right?
Yeah, my,
In
I
some
can
ways, you
tell-
think that
Some people were flattered by it,
Yeah,
believed it.
yeah.
Yeah.
so people were flattered by it, and that was not his intent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They,
Well,
about-
yeah.
they missed the point.
Mardi Gras.
Now, what is Binks doing the whole time? She's giving him this
Cringing.
freaking out. Remember?
Cringing. He's not
Go to page 226, top of the page. This is where the novel is really subtle. A cry goes up the street, in the street outside, and there comes into my sight the Negro my aunt spoke of. He is a cotard, that's the last of the chimney sweeps, an outlandish blue-black Negro dressed in a frock coat and bashed-in top hat, and carrying over his shoulder a bundle of palmetto leaves and broom straw. The cry comes again, the Rabone le cheminée du haut en bas. Clean out the soot, as we say, of the chimney from top to bottom.
Mm.
Oh, wow.
On
So, can you see how that's the commentary of what she has just said? She is the soot
Yeah,
Yeah.
clean her out.
that needs
Yeah.
to be cleaned.
Yeah, I think that stuff needs to go.
And of course, what Binks is doing the whole time is fingering. Did you catch what he was doing?
He's looking at the
He had a letter opener.
letter opener.
He remembered as a child trying to pry open a drawer with, and it has a blunt end.
Yeah.
The letter opener has a blunt end. Just to say, Aunt Emily, everything you're saying has a blunt end. It doesn't cut any ice.
I'm trying to figure out whether the Mardi Gras, all the crews and all this elitism in terms of the participation of the aunt and her culture are like films. or film going or something. In other words, it's this kind of illusory hiding from reality. But it is a religious celebration in some weird way.
So I was curious about to what degree are the Mardi Gras parties almost like a way of watching film? You're watching a story, you're observing this thing, so it's in front of you.
It's escapist for the old South,
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
ant.
Yeah. It's
And
their own kind of movie going.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Did you catch the timeline of this book?
yes,
It
yes.
begins on the Wednesday prior to
Ash Wednesday.
Mardi Gras
Right.
and ends on Ash Wednesday.
And they missed all the parades coming
See, the
up.
point is, Binks is coming to see, I've lived a Mardi Gras life. In my snide disdain for everything that's empty, sentimental, full of you know what, I'm the sinner. And I've got to stop living this self-indulgent life. But let's see how he does that. That's okay. Am I going too fast?
No, sir.
Stop me. And you may have other questions you'd rather ask, but let's look at the epilogue on page 236, beginning on page 236. Now remember, he is married. Did you notice how he backs into marriage? She proposes to him.
That was a weird, I thought, is he for real or what? Yeah, yeah.
Because he's been saying how dependent these women are. She is the one, hey, we're going to get married, aren't we? But notice, she has to go up and have a final sentimental farewell with Lonnie. Binks doesn't need to do that. Why not?
Because he's been doing it all this time.
Who said it? I can't hear.
He's been doing it all
He's
this
been doing
time.
it. He's been doing it
Yeah.
every time we saw him.
Lonnie's content to die. Binks knows he's content to die. To have a sentimental farewell would ruin it all. But you see, Kate hasn't yet got it. So she goes up to tell Lonnie goodbye. And while she's up there, the kids are all frolicking down below in the parking lot, and on page 240 may be one of the best scenes of the whole novel. Down about a third of the way on 240. Only the two girls are sad, but they are also secretly proud of having caught on to the tragedy. Don East, and you talk about a good Southern name. Suzanne has a friend whose daughter's named Don East. We're rednecks from East Texas. We know these names. You don't catch them, you're sophisticates from Anglicanism. Sorry. Don East casts about Binks, he says, and then appears to forget. When our Lord raises up on the last day, will Lonnie still be in a wheelchair? Or will it be like us? He'll be like you. You mean he'll be able to ski? In the South, what kind of skiing is that?
That's water skiing,
That's
man.
water skiing.
Yeah.
We're not Yankees. And Banks says, yes. Hooray, cry the twins. That's a direct steal from the ending of the Brothers Karamazov. It ends precisely in that way. Hurrah for Karamazov. Then going on, then wait a minute, I'll be right back. And Don East cries out, Binks, we love you too. But Kate then comes out of the hospital. She comes down to collect the kids, and all she says, oh, you were very sweet with them. And Binks says, thanks. You want to catch it? You were so sweet. You cheered those poor little kids up. You know that Lonnie's not going to be able to ski. Lonnie's going to plant the farm. He'd be pushing up daisies. And Lonnie and Binks says, you missed it. You missed it. What does she mean with that? This is at the very bottom, 240. When she says, you were very sweet with those kids. Thanks.
Because
What's the matter? Nothing. You do me a favor? What? And then he goes, why does he give that dejected thanks? What is she oblivious to? What does his future wife miss?
Did she just feel like he was pacifying them?
Hmm? Said he-
Feels like he was pacifying them instead of
When
being
in
a
fact,
spiritual question.
He's stumbling toward the kingdom.
Yeah, yeah,
I can't say I fully believe, but by God, if I'm going to believe anything, I better believe that.
right.
he is speaking to them as a kind of believer with belief.
Yeah.
So when he says he's going to water ski again, he's not saying just be a good soldier.
Oh,
He
no,
is
no,
speaking about
no.
something he believes.
He says, I want to die the way Lonnie's died.
So I'm curious about, can I read the rest of the very
Please
end?
do. What page?
The very end. I'm going to pick up where because
Good.
I'm curious if you also have I'm curious about what's going on at the very, very end. What's the matter? Nothing. Will you do me a favor? What? I'll be up here all day with Lonnie and the children. Will you go downtown for me and pick up some governments at the office? Your mother has decided again to keep them at home. She thinks that if war comes, her desk is safer than the vault. Will you go? Alone? Yes, you can ride the streetcar down St. Charles. It is nice sitting by an open window. I wouldn't know what to ask for. You don't have to. I'll call Mr. Klosterman. He'll hand you an envelope. Here's what you do. Take the streetcar, get off at Common, walk right into the office. Mr. Klosterman will give you an envelope. You won't have to say a word. Then catch the streetcar at the same place. It will go on down to Canal and come back up St. Charles. I don't have any money. Here. She considers the quarter in her palm. Here's the only thing. It's not that I'm afraid. She looks at a Cape Jasmine sticking through an iron fence. I pick it and give it to her. You're sweet, says Kate uneasily. Now tell me, what? While I'm on the streetcar, are you going to be thinking about me? Yes. What if I don't make it home? Get off and walk home. I've got to be sure about one thing. What? I'm going to sit next to the window on the lakeside and put the Cape Jasmine in my lap. That's right. And you'll be thinking of me just that way? That's right. Goodbye. Goodbye. 20 feet away, she turns around. Mr. Klosterman? Mr. Klosterman. I watch her walk towards St. Charles, Cape Jasmine held against her cheek, until my brothers and sisters call out behind me.
What an ending.
So I always found that very moving in that I've wondered, is he going from having been this moviegoer of watching something that's not real to I'm going to watch something that is real. I'm going to watch my wife get on a streetcar who's slightly scared, screw up her courage and do this task. And is she saying, I'll be able to do this almost because of your thoughts and prayers?
Mm-hmm.
That if I know you're thinking of me,
Yeah.
I won't disappear.
Yeah, good.
I will matter.
And notice that must be a promise that has a concrete manifestation. You all know what Cape Jasmine is. The sweetest of
Mhm.
all southern flowers.
Mhm.
Hold that. Smell that. That's the sign I'm going to be remembering you. In effect,
Yeah.
caring for you, praying for you, hoping
Yeah.
for you.
And so years ago at that Hurricane Katrina sermon, that's how I ended the sermon. And I thought, oh, what a wonderful dramatic end of the sermon. Well, people later at church were like, is Kate okay? What happened to Kate? That was not a good way to end the sermon. But I have always found that just a moving ending to that. I mean, because he is now engaging the real world.
That's exactly, he's engaged.
He's
He is
engaged.
finally
He's engaged, yeah.
And engaged in the world, what's he going to do now after they've married? He's going back to medical school. The thing that, of course, Aunt Emily said, you've got to do, stop being this playboy, this wastrel. Get your rear into action. Go to med school. You qualify.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But he's going not because she's made him feel guilty. Tell me why he's going.
He made a choice.
Ma'am?
He made a choice. It was his choice.
He's continuing the search, I think. He's still on the search. The search goes on. I want
Yeah,
the
well, he's-
sequel to this.
He has a
Can you write
reason for
sequel?
going to medical school. He wants to go to medical school to cure human bodies, but also Percy says, I want to thump the human soul.
Ooh.
But so you see, it's a hugely positive ending, but that's subtly positive, not in your face positive. And a lot of people miss it. My students stopped being able to get that, so I taught the rough book, not other.
Is there a scene that we did not cover that someone had a question about?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about his relationship with his dad. Like when he goes to Chicago, I thought, and his dad looks at him and he's asking him in his vision, he says, I just feel like he's asking something that I can't give him. And to me, I went, gosh, is that because, you know, he's feeling the absence of his own father? And not only that, but that's a lot to ask of a child to give to you what is something that you're needing as an adult. Part of a relationship is, his
You'll find
brother
that
had
passage
died.
because
I'll have to
remember,
find it.
Binks's father is dead.
Yeah, this was talking when they went back to Chicago.
Right.
He went once with Scotty and his dad, and then he went back again.
Oh, again, yeah. the
With
second-
his
Oh,
dad.
yeah, he's talking about the 20, and there were 25 years in between. I mean, one time was a
Yes,
ball
yes,
game
and-
and one time was like a world exposition.
Yeah.
Yes, and he, you know, how much and I thought, another thing, Chicago must have just had so many terrible memories for Binks. And his father wanted to be all about, look what the future can do, and he was, I gotta find it.
I think you found the page. Have you found the page?
Not yet, no, not yet. I kind of,
But remember, this is the time also
I think it's
When-
near the beginning of the chapter where they arrive in Chicago.
when he and Kate attempt sex.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Phil.
So it's so funny. He's had all these orgasmic ecstasies with all those secretaries, none of whom has failed. He has not failed them, and they both fail each other, and therefore get married.
And that's when Rory, I went, who on God's green earth is Rory?
Calhoun.
The actor,
The
yeah.
actor.
Was he a real actor?
Yeah.
Oh, he was.
You're a young lady. My wife remembers it.
Oh, yeah.
She's an old lady.
I didn't know Rory. I went, who is Rory?
He was a B-plus actor. He did B movies.
Page
My husband
202.
My husband would know.
202.
He knows
Is
all
where he's
the
talking
things.
about going there with his father.
What page?
Page 202.
Is it that far?
Chicago is just as I remembered it.
Yes, it is right. It's calling about Chicago being the genie soul, and it's got a bad genie soul.
Mm-hmm.
And
But when you're, and then he talks about Southerners remembering Shiloh, Wilderness, and Vicksburg and Atlanta, and, you know, kind of like the lost causes.
see if oh, this is it.
Where are you?
I'm on 204.
Okay.
And it starts talking about some years after Scott's death, and he and his father come back, and they were looking at a tableau of the Stone Age man, father, mother, and child crouched around an artificial ember in postures of miniature quiet. Until, feeling my father's eye on me, I turned and I saw what he required of me. Very special father and son we were that summer. He staking his everything this time on a perfect comradeship, and I, seeing in his eyes the terrible request requiring from me his very life. I life through a child's cool perversity or some atavistic recoil from an intimacy too intimate, turned him down, turned away, refused him what I knew I could not give. It's made me very sad. And then his father dies,
He was a
and so.
boy then.
Huh?
He
Yeah.
was a boy
Yeah.
when they
Yeah.
moved in,
Yeah,
25 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, but.
Yes, but he
Still-
felt that as a child.
Yeah.
And you know, what, I can't imagine as a mother, looking at my child expecting something, wanting something from them, and that's a big burden to put on a child. I mean, yes, I want them to clean their room, I want them to do their homework, I want them to practice their violins, and I want them to eat their vegetables. But, you know, to get that kind of emotional support from your child, and I'm the one that was supposed to nurture the child, not the child nurture the parent.
Mhm.
And so that is.
I think Binks is saying, even as a child, I saw that I could not give my father his life meaning. I could not give meaning to his life. I could not be the surrogate.
Yeah.
And to me, that is a burden you shouldn't put on a child.
Yes.
That is a really big burden. You
That's
can't
why,
do
that's why
that.
he refused it, so.
What now?
I see that's what, I think that's what he's saying, it was too big a burden.
It was too
Yeah.
big,
So he
but
couldn't.
then his father commits suicide and he can't repair it. You know, when he's older, you can try to change that relationship to a more equal relationship, but a child is a child.
Yeah. I'm going to be mindful of our time, and I'm going to be mindful that it's always good to stop before they want us to stop, right?
I want to talk about the next
And
book.
Susan, you talk about the next book.
Mm.
So, can we thank Dr. Ralph Wood for leading us to this?
So we are going to take a summer break, August and September, because both Brian and I will be out of town on the third Thursdays of those 2 months. So our next book will be October 20th, and it's going to be Saints and Villains by Denise Giardina.
What is it?
Saints and Villains.
Saints and Villains by Denise Giardina.
And I wanted to read a little
It's her
blurb
novel on
about it.
Bonhoeffer.
Will you send
Oh,
that out?
good.
It's about Bonhoeffer. I will send it out. I
Mm.
want to
Good,
read
good,
this little
good.
blurb just to get you enticed. In the charnel house that was Europe in the Second World War, there were few instances of shining moral courage, let alone secular sainthood. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German theologian and Nazi resistor, was the exception. This emblematic figure risked his life and finally lost it through his participation in a failed plot to assassinate Hitler and topple his regime. Saints and Villains gives us this exemplary life in a sweeping narrative that is bold in conception and utterly convincing in its power of imaginative reconstruction. So she has taken the history of Dietrich Bonhoeffer and turned it into a historical fiction, filled in the gaps.
She's and Denise is a native of West Virginia. Served as an ordained Episcopal deacon. I don't know how active she is in that right now. And what's interesting about this novel, she takes Bonhoeffer and does some historical smudgy stuff with it, in that she at some point has Bonhoeffer as a classmate of Miles Horton, who started the Highlander Center. So Miles Horton did go to Union, and Bonhoeffer went to Union, but they did not know each other. So she gives it a kind of Appalachian version of Bonhoeffer, which is fun. But yeah, Saints and Villains is a good
Yeah,
novel.
I've heard of that.
Worth reading.